Welcome to the Matchfit Conditioning Podcast. Transforming over 100,000 footballers worldwide. Everything we do is aimed at enabling you to gain an edge completely by yourself without needing help from a training partner or teammate. Open yourself to doing things smarter and with more intention, focus and attention to detail than your teammates, opponents, and even your coaches. Are you ready to get match fit?
Hi, welcome to Matchfit Conditioning. Today the question we're going to be answering is, do you recommend using BFR, which is blood flow restriction training, in season? So to start with, what is BFR? It's basically the use of a cuff, so that could be something like a knee wrap or a wrist wrap, or it could be something that actually kind of mechanically measures the amount of pressure it's putting on you, and you restrict blood flow while you're exercising. So basically what it does, it gives you the ability to maintain arterial flow to the muscle, so the muscle still has a supply of blood and oxygen. However, it prevents venous return, so the muscle can't return the blood back to the heart for it to reoxygenate. So basically the concept is that by restricting this venous returns, the blood flow back to the heart, you can actually exaggerate some of the mechanisms by which we think we achieve hypertrophy, and therefore you can achieve hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, without doing quite so much work or lifting heavy loads. So the benefit of this is that you don't have to do quite as much work. So instead of lifting 70% of your 1 rep max, you can actually lift 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max and get roughly the same amount of hypertrophy or slightly less hypertrophy. So it can still be effective at building muscle, but obviously you don't have to go through the arduous task of lifting lots of weights, and 70% of your 1RM is probably quite heavy for things like sets of 10, especially when your program's going to ask you to do it for multiple sets. So especially for people like bodybuilders who train all the time and sometimes get fatigued, you can see why this could be a really attractive thing to do. So why does this work? Well, there's a couple of proposed mechanisms, but basically the main one that's kind of accepted at the moment, because we don't know what else might cause it, is that it increases the amount of metabolic stress, which is a mechanism which causes hypertrophy. This then increases the hormonal response due to the fact that there's a higher amount of waste products in the muscle and in the blood. Our body struggles with that, and it basically gives our body the perception that we're doing a huge amount of work and therefore need to adapt and build more muscle to actually improve and therefore continue to deal with the work that our body is having to do. So why might you want to do this in season? I think it probably wouldn't be the best idea to do it in season due to the fact that there's going to be soreness caused, and generally muscular hypertrophy isn't something that we're looking for in season. During the season, usually we're looking to maintain strength and power so we can continue to perform every Tuesday and every Saturday or whenever it is that you play. So hypertrophy is probably something that you're looking at trying to produce in your preseason. So it's something that could be utilized then. One of the major benefits for using blood flow restriction training is that it takes less time, or you can do additional work without becoming too fatigued. So if you're already training for an hour, it's going to be really tough to do 6 more sets of a certain exercise, or if you're going to add more work into a program. But if you've been training for an hour, it could be really easy to add 10 minutes onto the end of the session, and it might be blood flow restriction training on something like a leg extension or a hamstring curl. And this could be something that drives a greater amount of hypertrophy with a really small time cost and not that much of a great effort cost. So it could be something that's quite useful in preseason. However, I wouldn't recommend using it during the season because you want to make sure you're fresh all the time. You don't want to be sore, so you can train at a really high level and then you can play at a really high level. So BFR has actually become quite popular, especially in the rehab world, and it's actually a really good idea to use in the rehab type setting. So if you are rehabbing an injury, it's going to take you a long time to get to a stage where you can use loads that you were previously accustomed to. You're going to have to build up really gradually. But if you use something like blood flow restriction training, you can pretty much jump in straight away, and then you can begin to build muscle so you can limit the amount of muscle you've lost quite easily without doing too much work. So there's a real benefit, I think, to using this in a rehab type setting or a pre-season setting, whereas during the season, I think it's probably not the best idea. So if you are an experienced player and you've been in the gym a lot, you've got quite a good level of strength, you can lift maybe 1 times your body weight in a back squat or a bench press, then in your pre-season, you might be warranted using a blood flow restriction. However, if you don't have a great strength level in the first place, if you can't back squat or front squat your body weight, if you can't bench press your body weight, then I'd probably not recommend using blood flow restriction training, because it's not something that's actually necessary for you to produce hypertrophy and improve as a footballer. So with anything, it depends on the individual with this, but I definitely wouldn't use blood flow restriction in season most of the time, in most cases, but it can be useful for some footballers in some situations.
Thanks for tuning into the Matchfit Conditioning Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with one of your teammates. To learn more about the Matchfit method and to start your training with us, visit www.matchfitconditioning.com. We'll show you how to gain an edge on the pitch at an elite level by transforming your fitness level, nutrition, and mindset.